Mr. Ward, go ahead.
Morning, Chairman Mathias and board members and superintendent. Appreciate the opportunity to come in this morning. I wanted to come in and address a couple of concerns that have come out, or questions that have come out since the approval of the tentative budget. If you'll recall, the approval of the tentative budget was for $1.2 billion, and that sounds like a lot of money. And so I felt like it would be helpful to kind of explain what that $1.2 billion is, and also to have the opportunity to explain that the $1.2 billion is not exactly the amount of money that we expect to collect or spend. The $1.2 billion represents all of the accounting aspects of the budget, and it also includes items that aren't actually revenues or expenditures. Those would include transfers in and out between funds. So when you have we do fund accounting, and some funds transfer funds from one fund to the other, it looks as if in the budget that that's an increase in revenues and an increase in expenditures. However, that's not really a true revenue and a true expenditure. Governmental accounting budget requirements, they require us to do it that way. I know it seems like it makes it significantly larger than what it really is. But again, it's not an actual revenue or additional spending. Another example is our internal service fund funding. In our general funds and our revenue funds, where we have employee benefits cost for the board's contribution for our insurance, that's shown as an expenditure, and that money is moved over into the internal service fund, which shows it as an additional revenue. And then when the claims are paid out, they're paid out of the internal service fund, so it shows an additional expenditure. So it looks like it has a doubling up appearance in the total budget when you include all the funds together. And of course, we have $94.9 million of charter school pass-through funding. This is revenue and expenditures to us, but this is simply the FEFP dollars from the state coming into the district and then flowing back out to the charter schools. So again, that is not truly our budget. It's up to them on how they spend those funds, and they have the ability to do that. And then finally, probably one of the larger pieces of non-real revenue or expenditure is our fund balance and our reserves. We have $234 million in fund balances and reserves. This fund balance includes our general fund balance, which has a 4% board minimum requirement. The state's 3%, but the board policy is 4%, that we have to maintain at all times. It also includes the 60 days of claims in our internal service fund that we have to keep. But one of the larger things that it includes is our capital reserves. And the reason why our capital reserves are so high is because our board is financially stewardship has chose to do a pay-as-you-go approach, which means that you earn the money first before you start the projects. And some of these projects are getting close to $2 million plus, so you have to accumulate a lot of money before you start those construction projects. So that leads to a large amount. So you can see the actual true budgeted expenditures that you guys approved is only $752 million.
Only.
Exactly. So
Can I go back for just 1 second?
Yes, sir.
And this has only been confusing to me for 14 years. And I always just stopped with its government accounting.
Leave it to a good government accounting to make things kind of
the transfers in and out has always been confusing to me.
Yep.
Just saying.
I understand. So what did we actually budget in real?
I appreciate that explanation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were making a point. I didn't know you wanted me to explain it. So again, we pull money in through capital outlay, and we take that money and we pay for our loans for our capital outlay projects.
Can you explain what? Okay, can you give me an example of a capital outlay project?
A capital outlay project would be building a new school.
Okay.
So years ago, when the district decided to build a lot of new schools, they borrowed money, they bonded money to millions and millions of dollars of money. So the way that we pay that back is through the millage tax dollars that we receive and some of the impact fees that we receive. We pull that money into a capital outlay account because that's where it's required to be recorded at. But the debt service comes from a debt service account. And there's nothing that funds a debt service account except for a transfer in from the capital outlay. So the money comes in capital outlay, and then we move it over into the debt service fund and pay it out of the debt service fund. So it looks like an expenditure in the debt service fund and a revenue and an expenditure in the capital outlay fund. So it doubles up the impact of that debt service, which is $17 million for the district. And then we also do the same thing with the allowable funds that we can transfer for the things that we spend at our capital out of the general fund. We're allowed to transfer money out of capital fund to cover those, and we'll cover that transfer later in a different slide. But again, revenue coming in, Transfer out would be an expenditure. Transfer back into the general fund would be a revenue, and then we actually spend the money out of it would be a expenditure.
And
So
we have to do that, why? Instead of just,
governmental accounting procedures.
okay, there you go. Back to where we started.
So what did we actually budget as far as expenditures? You can see we have $449 million for our general fund. Our general fund is our general operating fund, and it's the one that has some limited flexibility in it. Then we have our special revenue fund, our debt service fund, our capital projects funds. All of these are restricted to specific programs. Special revenue fund can only be used for the child nutrition program for food service. That money cannot be commingled anywhere else in the district. It has to remain separate. And a lot of our other special revenue funds that are federal dollars are supplemental funds. They cannot be used to supplant other things. They have to be added to what we're already doing with our general fund, and they have to stay separate. Our debt service fund, which we just referred to, is how we make our principal and interest payments on our long-term debt, which are all related to our facilities that we've purchased in the past. And then our capital projects is our funding that we receive either through our property tax or our impact fees or the funding that we get from the county through our sales tax referendum. And all of those funds have to stay separate from the general fund, and they cannot be used to supplant the day-to-day operation of the school district. They're legally bound to stay in capital projects. And then we also have an enterprise fund. It's a small fund that we have. Our enterprise fund is a business-like fund, and it is our before and after daycare at our elementary schools and our K-8 schools. So that's just a separate fund that handles all the transactions for those business-like opportunities for our before and after school care at our district schools.
Mr. Ward, real quick before you move on, refresh me on the year. Our debt service, we should be debt-free at our current track, I think 2031, 2032,
I think
somewhere
it's
in there.
3031 or 3132.
Okay.
It's
I
in
think that's
that
important to be
general
on the
area.
record that we've been
Yes, sir.
paying down debt and there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Thank you.
This slide just basically shows the same slide that we just had, except if you'll look and see the red strike-throughs are the restricted funds that we don't really have to spend any way that we would like. We have very little. Sorry, I changed it on mine. Oh, for some reason that one doesn't have it. Anyway, the special revenue, debt service, and capital and enterprise funds, these are all restricted for specific purposes and cannot be used to supplement the general fund. So what do we have in our budget for our general fund? We've talked about the revenues and expenditures, but where are we at financially? The beginning fund balance is $42.8 million. Our current budget, our tentative budget, has $396 million in revenues, $36.9 million in a transfer in from capital outlay funds, which gives us $475 million available for expenditures. Our current budget expenditures are $448.9 million, leaving us $26.7 million as a reserve or for other contingencies. Again, our ending fund balance is budgeted to be $16 million less than our beginning fund balance, and which means we're using existing reserves to balance our current year operation.
What percentage is the fund balance?
Currently, it's on our budgeted fund balance, it's a little over 6% without factoring in other reserves and everything else. So it's closer to 5 when you factor in
About
reserves.
26.7 is around 5%-ish fund balance.
Yes.
Okay.
Wrong way. All right. So of that $26.7 million ending fund balance, you can see that about 2.4 of that is non-spendable. A non-spendable fund balance is basically a non-cash type fund balance. This is our inventory. And what that means is at the end of the day, if we needed to make payments for someone for salaries or for goods and services, we can't pay them in inventory. Therefore, it's a non-spendable fund balance. And then we have the board's
Why is that in
minimum,
the budget? Why would that be in the budget?
because it's an asset. And an asset is part of fund balance, just like cash would be or an investment. And then the other piece is the minimum fund balance. The minimum fund balance is the 4% that the board has. The state requirement is a 3% minimum fund balance, but the board policy is a 4% fund balance. So the set aside is $15.8 million for the minimum fund balance, which leaves us $8.5 million for any kind of remaining contingencies that occur throughout the year. And this slide shows the trend that we've been incurring for the last couple of years. You can see In 23, 24, we were at our peak. We had a lot of funding that was additional that was allowed to supplant some of the general fund over the time. And our post COVID, we were starting to see our enrollment increase up until about 23, 24. And then you'll see that we've been spending our reserves down ever since then. And you can see in 26, at the end of the year, we were a little over $20 million in fund balance. Now, there are a couple of things that are driving that, and I felt like it was important to share that with you, especially in a lot of conversation going on today about property tax values and school property tax values being increasing so much. I think it's a good opportunity to remind most of the audience that we are not funded directly from property taxes. We are funded by a formula that uses state property taxes and state dollars. As property taxes increase, our state funding will decrease. Now, that's not what's happened post-COVID for our state. What's generally happened across the state and state of Florida is several students have been added to the formula, and that would be our choice for scholarship students. So in effect, the state has leveraged the increase in property tax values to cover the increase in cost for the school choice scholarships that are going on, that are part of the FEFP formula now. This graph has, I'm so sorry. This graph has the base student allocation and what's been happening for the past 23, 24 years. The bottom blue line is what the base student allocation is. And you can see that over time, that has only been about a 1.01% increase, very minimal increase over time. Again, the state controls the majority of our FEFP funding. And no matter how much our property values have gone up, our actual funding for our students has not kept up with that pace. If you'll look at the orange line, you'll see that that is the line of what happens if you take the 2004 and you increase the base student allocation to keep up with the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index. That's an economic index of how much cost of goods sold are across time. And you can see that we cannot keep up with cost of goods sold because our base funding has not kept up with that. And then the top line being the green line, that is the employment cost index. That's a nationwide index of all employees on how much the cost of salaries and benefits have gone up over time. And again, you can see we're well below that line. So it is becoming extremely difficult to keep up with everyone else when your funding cannot keep up to keep your salaries up. So what would a CPI increase look like for the district? For our instructional, mainly our classroom teachers, but also our other instructional employees, we budget about $125 million for salaries and benefits. And if you gave a 2.9% raise, which is what the CPI was for 2025, that would be $5.19 million or $5.2 million. Sorry, I got two going on here. For the other support personnel, our the budgeted cost for them is $74.6 million, and a 2.9% raise for salary and benefit increase for them would be $2.6 million, and our administrators would be $17 million total, and a 2.9% raise for them would be $604,000. So a total to keep up with the CPI would be $8.4 million. Remember, we only have 8.5 in our contingencies. Therefore, there's no way we would keep up with the CPI, obviously, because we would have $0 for any contingencies. We didn't budget any pay increases this year other than the required portion that we have to give to the teachers, which has already been negotiated with the teachers union, and you guys have already approved that agreement. So as you can see, there's very difficult to keep up with any kind of pay increases with everybody outside of our entity or agency when our funding has been kept so low by the state.
By other support, do you mean our service workers,
Yes.
bus drivers?
Correct.
Okay.
Bus drivers, food service workers, everyone. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Next slide just shows what our enrollment's been doing over time. And you can see that the bottom dark blue is our traditional schools. The orange is our virtual school. That's Lake Virtual School that we provide in the district. The green is the charter school growth, and then the blue is the scholarship. And you can see the trend has been that the scholarships have been increasing. But what you will note is that the increase in scholarships is not offset by a decrease by the traditional schools. So it goes back to what I was saying before about the state leveraging the increase in school taxable values. A lot of students have been added to us and our property values and taxes have gone up, but little of that has trickled back down to our traditional school students and our charter school students. Most of that's been to fund the increase in scholarships that the state has done. And just for context, if we lost, we had a declining enrollment. I won't say lost. We had a declining enrollment of 624 students in 24-25. We had an 869 decline in 25-26. We're projected for an 824, which is already adjusted through our budget. However, if we were to lose an additional 950 students, that entire $8.5 million contingency would go away. So we wouldn't have any contingency at all.
I'm sorry, would you repeat the number of students that we would have to lose for that to go away?
950. So if our enrollment declines another additional 950 students, we will have no contingency.
Scott, just to clear something up real quick for me, from the first slide on the budget summary with the charter pass through 94 million, you don't need to go back, but does that 94 million, is that just charter pass through? Does that also include scholarships and choice?
That is just charter.
Okay. Do you know what the number is for roughly
Not
for
off the top of my head,
but it's
not
another
included in our budget. It's
large number though, to the
Yes,
point of just the
it is.
pass through at 70, 80 million plus,
That
I
is
believe.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
I feel like I recall scholarships being about 83 million.
I think that's
believe
about
so.
right.
Is that right?
That number sounds familiar, but I'd hate to give a number and it be
Yeah,
inaccurate.
I think it's somewhere around
Somewhere
there.
around there.
Yep.
It has grown.
Yeah.
Substantially. And so one of the other concerns is about the voter approval, voter approved 0.75 millage, what's in our budget currently, and obviously if it's not renewed, what would go away. We total our current budget for just the district, not including the well, actually it does include charter schools, is 0.75 would be $39.4 million in the current budget. Charter schools portion would be $6.1 million. Again, we've always shared the charter school a proportionate share, even before the law changed. However, there is a law now that requires us to do so. We are definitely in compliance with that charter school law. The other one would be a $6.2 million for our school resource officers. These are our law enforcement officers that are in our schools. These are contracted out. There are a couple of other minor contracts that are out there that are not related to school resource officers, but the majority of the contracted services are with our officers. We do cover some cost of our guardians, but the majority of our guardians are covered out of the school safety funding portion of the FEFP. So they're not all included in the 0.75, but if there is a shortfall, we do cover it out of the 0.75. And I'll cover what's in salary and benefits in the next slide. So you can see we have $27 million in current budget for salaries and benefits for those that are funded out of our 0.75 voter millage. So what do we have?
Is that your mental health?
Yes, sir. And what we have coming out of those funds, currently we have 139 alternative school personnel, all of the school personnel at our 4 alternative school sites. This would not include our education alternative at Lincoln Park, but all of our other alternative schools are included in here. Their total personnel would be $7.6 million. We currently have 59 school counselors at $4.8 million. We have 59 student service department employees at $4.2 million. We have 51 school nurses at $3.3 million. We have 41 mental health liaisons at $3.4 million. We have 37 past teachers at $2.9 million. And then we have 8 safety and security department employees at $663,000. And then other school personnel, there's 4 other personnel in the district that are 182. So that explains 398 employees being in the current 0.75 voter approved millage. And obviously, if that millage wasn't renewed, we would have to scramble to figure out how we would cover those out of the general fund. And again, we have an $8.5 million contingency. So you can see part of the concern that we have financially with the lack of funding from the state. And that's all I had for the presentation this morning. I'll take any of your questions, any additional questions that you may have or clarifications.
I've got just one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
The 8 personnel in safety and security, is that district employees?
Yes, ma'am. They're serving in the schools, but they are district department employees.
No comments. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have a comment.
I know.
And Elizabeth, this will look familiar to you. because You carried this to Tallahassee for me, as did others. This is the FEFP that he's speaking about. For anybody in the room, this is what it looks like if you take the notebook that has them all listed and you put it all on a spreadsheet. And I think what's important for everybody to look at is this is where Lake County ranks in per student funding. We're 64th out of 67 counties in per student funding. If we were just at the state average, don't take away anything from the big boys, and you'll see this column over here are districts that are below the state average. And it takes us down to here. Just at state average would bring another $22 million a year into our district. This is my 14th year of showing this, and the legislature can't seem to get a grip on their own 1972 requirement that all schools are equal in funding. They just haven't done it. And we haven't ever taken any legal, but as I am maybe leaving, maybe that might be something y'all want to talk about at some point. But it's just not fair, folks. And if you think about us scrambling and we're doing all of this to try and take care of our teachers, if we just were at average, and what would be wrong with that, right? So here it is, and I'm gonna give this one to you because this is fresh, and that's all I have to say about that. But everyone has it because I think that it's important for the public, particularly as we're going out and we're gonna be speaking about the millage. They understand where we are and that we're not flush. And I think that to the naysayers that I've seen, they got really hung up on the budget being 1.2 billion, and why can't we carve out 10 million? There's all that conversation. So I think that this was very helpful. It was to me. And I think the quicker we get it on the internet, the better. And the quicker you get it to your folks so that they understand it. So I'm going to hand you this. I know you got to go.